everyone, it's Lindy on from Pink Whisper Designs. Today I've got a really fun brand new set to show you from Art Impressions, and we're going to be creating this mini faux shaker card, and I'll talk about why I called it a faux shaker card a little bit later as we go along. So here's the set that we're going to be using today. Again, this is the Woodlands Bear set, a brand new set, and it's got so many cute little items in it. Of course, I love the idea that the dies are also included in this set. So we'll go ahead and cut those apart using the steel die cutters. And then let's do some stamping. I've got my mini MISTI stamp positioner. I've placed some Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock in there. And I'm inking up my stamps using the Versafine Onyx black ink. This is a permanent ink because we're going to be doing some coloring using some water-based markers. And these are the Zig Clean Color Real Brush pens. I'll start off with the light gray, and then I'm going to add a little sugared almond pink to the cheeks and the nose. And I'll use the Zig blender pen to do my blending, but you could certainly use a water brush here if you prefer. I just find the blender pen is really easy to use. It really moves that ink around nicely. And the Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock is my favorite cardstock to use with these markers. I always say it just kind of keeps that ink up on top of the surface and allows me plenty of time to do my blending. I'm going to switch over to the deep vermilion to do the little scarf. And all of the colors I'm using today will be listed in the upper left-hand corner as we're going along. Now, later on when I color in some of those additional packages, I did not list all of those colors in the corner. I will do some of that coloring off camera so that this doesn't take too long. But I will list all the colors on my blog, so you can always go there to check it out. I'm adding a little shadow to the bottom of that candy cane. And then just to give it a little bit more dimension, I'll add a little bit of that light gray to the areas that are white. And now let's keep that light gray out and do the little fur on the hat and on the little pom-pom. And then go back to that deep vermilion to do the rest of the hat. So these are really fun to color in. These little images are just so cute. You could always add some interest, which we'll be doing a little bit later on. We'll add some polka dots and some stitching using our gel pen and a permanent black pen. And if you saw me there, if you get any extra ink where you don't want it, just take your clean blender pen and grab that ink off the paper and scribble it onto your scrap paper, and just keep doing that until you get rid of that excess ink. So it's really easy to correct a mistake that you might have made. Now I'm going to these two shades of green to do the little sweater. And again, we'll add a little bit of stitching to this later on just to personalize it a little bit. I also want to mention that all of the products I'm using today will be listed and linked down below, as well as on my blog. So getting back to the reason I'm calling this a faux shaker card is because the little gems that we're going to be putting inside the shaker pocket won't really shake around that much. A few of them will, to give the illusion that it's a shaker card, but for the most part I wanted them to stay in place. So we're going to be gluing them in place. And then again, leaving a few free so that it will give that effect of a shaker card. I'll show you exactly what I did when we get to that section of the card. But it's a fun way to kind of have a little more control over where your gems are in your shaker or your sequins or your glitter, whatever you're putting in there. Because I'm adding a sentiment to the center of the little label opening that we're going to create, I didn't want that sentiment to get covered by those gems, but I did want it to look like the gems were all over the card. So again, I'll show you that a little bit closer as we get to that point. Now to do the bird, I just added a little bit of the light blue. And then with beige and mid-brown, I'm going to color in this little cart. I love this little cart. And do keep in mind, I think this can be used in a lot of different projects. You can always cut away those presents and put whatever you want in here. You could put some little critters in here. You could put some little flowers and create a little garden inside this little cart. So have some fun with that. I really think this has a lot of possibilities, a lot of potential, and you could certainly color it in some bright spring and summer colors if you're going to add some flowers to this. I always like to look at my stamps with a different eye just to see what else I can use them for, so that they aren't just for a particular event. And even that stack of gift packages, that would certainly be used on a birthday card. So you've got a lot of options with this set, which is what I really love about it. And then I'm switching to the mid gray to do the wheel on this little cart. And I'm just adding the color to two sides and then pulling it around. And then let me just finish off this little back area. And then I thought it needed a little bit more shadowing where those little pieces of wood overlap. So I'm just going to go back to that mid-brown, add a little more shadowing, and then blend that out. Now back to that deep red vermilion, I'm going to do the bow on the top of these packages. And I'll just show you the bow. The rest of the packages, again, I will color in off camera. And for the packages, we'll also add some detail as well using our gel pen and a permanent black marker. This is a great time, once you're done with your coloring, to pull out some of your gel pens. They look really pretty when you add them to your images. Here I'm going to use that white gel pen, and I'm going to add some little stitches at the top and the bottom. I'll just add like a double layer of stitching at the top. Now if your ink is still wet, you may want to let it dry or heat set it before you use your gel pen. I jumped right in, and you might have to go over it a couple of times if the ink underneath is still wet. So do keep that in mind. But it's no problem. It'll take the ink just fine. Just make sure your coloring is pretty well dry before you use your gel pen, especially the white one, because it will bleed through just a little bit if the ink is wet underneath. And there you saw I added a few more details to those packages. And now I've got the black Pitt Artist pen. This is a 0.1 millimeter permanent black pen. And again, I'm going to add some little stitches on the scarf, on the little under layer of his sweater there. And then I'll add some little dots to a couple of these packages. And some little, like a little plaid pattern on the top of this box. So again, just a fun way to personalize your project. And then I added a few little stitches to that tag that's sticking out from that wagon. Now, again, this set does have the coordinating dies. I'm going to go ahead and tape those down with a little bit of Post-it tape. This is a great tape for just tacking down your dies. It's not so sticky that it's very difficult to get off. It really removes easily, and it doesn't leave any marks behind. So I tend to reach for this most often. So here everything is die cut. I ran them through my Spellbinders Platinum Scout machine. I love that machine. It's got a nice wide platform, and it's a little bit longer, so you can add most of your dies onto it now, unless it's a large die. Most of your smaller dies will fit on here, and I really like that. It's just easier to pull that out. It's not as bulky as my regular die cut machine, so I really enjoy using that. And then you can see I've got my Wink of Stella clear glitter pen, and I'm adding some glitter to all of these little areas just to make everything sparkle a little bit better. Now I've got my Art Impressions A2 double stitch die set, and I'm grabbing the largest one, and I die cut that from some heavyweight Kraft cardstock. And then with this second largest one, I've die cut from this classic Christmas paper pad from Art Impressions. I've die cut that snowflake pattern, and then I've also die cut an extra one out of some Strathmore Bristol Smooth 100-pound cardstock. So I went ahead and die cut those off camera. Now what we want to do is grab that snowflake. This will be the front of the card, the front panel of the card. So I'm going to just figure out where I want this little label die to be. And this label die is from the brand new Art Impressions Portfolio Template Die Set. This has tons of dies in it. You guys know I love these portfolio die sets. I use all the little elements in these sets. I love to use them, and I thought this little label was just perfect. So I placed that die on there, ran it through my die cutting machine, and now I have the little label that popped out of there. So I've just tacked it down onto my mini MISTI using my Tombow mono double-sided tape. And then we're going to grab that sentiment, and it says, "Have a very Merry Christmas." And that goes perfectly with this set. So let's go ahead and stamp that, and I'm just centering it on that little label. I did stamp that one more time off camera just to make sure it was nice and bold. And once that was done, I'm grabbing the Sand Dune Clair ink pad. This is a beautiful light beige color. It's just going to add a little hint of color around the edges of the Kraft cardstock. This will be the A2 size cardstock. And then I'm going to use that same ink around the edges of this snowflake paper. And again, it's just going to soften everything and tie everything together. Just using a small blending brush to blend that. And I'll also add a little bit to this label that we die cut. And then for that third panel that we die cut from the Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock, we're not going to add any ink to the edges of that, but we are going to use it to create a couple of little snow banks for the bottom of the card. So I'm going to tear back and forth towards me and away from me to give that ruffled edge, and I'll flip that around so that I keep that little stitching border around the bottom and the two sides. And I'll tear another piece that's a little bit taller than that first one. So let's go ahead and glue this first one down. I'm not going to glue all the way up to the top just because I wasn't sure at this point if I would be tucking anything in behind there. So I'm going to leave that open so that I can if I need to. And then I'm going to grab some scrapbook.com foam squares. These are the larger foam squares, and I'm going to place those around this snowy border. Once that was done, I'll use my Cricut weeding tool and just pop off the backing on those, and we can attach this to the bottom of the card. Now we're going to add our acetate to the back of this snowflake panel. So I've got some double-sided tape. This is a 1/4 inch double-sided tape from scrapbook.com. I've placed plenty of it all over, and I'm going to attach a clear sheet of acetate that measures the exact same size as this panel, and I'm going to place that down. I want to press that out really well, just make sure it's nice and secure. And I'm just cutting away a little bit of excess tape there. Now I did die cut another white panel that same size as the snowflake panel, and I'm going to center this in that opening. Now I could have done this before I put the acetate in. That would have been a little bit easier. I didn't think of it at the time, so I'll show you a little trick on how to get this centered properly. I'm going to put some glue on the back of it, make sure it's the right side up. I'm just checking that. I'm placing it right back into that opening. And then since this panel is the exact same size, I'll lay it right down on top, and that'll pick up that little label and make sure that it's placed perfectly on our card. So that's a really easy way to do that. But again, if you thought of it, you probably want to do it before you put your acetate on. So now I've got some foam tape, and I'm going to place it all around this label opening. That's going to contain the little gems. And then I want to make sure they're right end to end so that nothing escapes there. So I want to make sure my tape is edge to edge and butting up against itself. And then I'll place a few extra pieces down below just to even everything out. And now you can see that little window is going to have that label right in the center. I've got these beautiful gems from Pinkfresh Studio, and I'm going to pour a few in here. And I'm going to turn them all right side up. They were kind of upside down, some of them. So I did take the time to turn them all up right side up. And here's where my little faux shaker element comes into play. What I'm doing is I'm actually gluing down some of the gems that will be inside this little shaker area. So they won't actually move around, but you'll get the illusion that they are moving around because I didn't glue all of them down. I just glued, I don't know, maybe like a dozen of them down. And the reason I did this is I didn't want to put too many shaker pieces in here because I don't want the sentiment to get covered. So if I loaded it up so that it would shake around really nicely, that sentiment might get covered. So you'll see that once I move this around a little bit, a lot of those little shaker pieces will go to the bottom or toward the edges, and my sentiment will show through nicely. So I hope that makes sense. Just another way of doing it. And as you probably noted, I only added one layer of the foam instead of doubling it up, which would give it a lot more movement. I'm kind of sandwiching those other shaker elements in place because there's not a lot of depth in there. So again, one layer of the foam tape, not two. And so if you do want these to shake around and you don't want to glue any down in the inside, then go ahead and add your double layer of foam tape and just let those move around. So whatever way you decide to do it is going to be great. I just thought this would be kind of a fun, unique way to show you how to kind of control what happens inside that shaker area. So now I've got some small 3D foam squares from scrapbook.com. I'll place those on the back of this little bird. I wanted this little bird to look like it was sitting up on top of this little label sentiment. You could certainly add some greenery underneath that bird or add a little branch there. That might be fun as well. And then what I'm going to do is just lay these out down at the bottom. I'll glue this set of packages down flat. And then for the little cart, I'll just add some foam squares to the top section of the cart, and then we'll glue the bottom section down just so this lays nice and flat on our card. Just again using that Cricut weeding tool to remove the backing on those, and then we'll glue this in place. Now what I thought this needed once I was done was to bring a few of those gems to the outside of the card just to tie everything together. So I grabbed a few more gems and I'm going to just kind of scatter those around the card. Now you could certainly glue a few onto that acetate as well if you wanted to, so keep that in mind. I did not. I just kind of scattered them around the snowflake pattern paper. Again, just to kind of bring a little bit of that sparkle to the front panel of the card. I'm using that Marvy jewel picker to pick those up and just place those down. That makes it really easy to attach these to your card. And then I did quickly decide to use that same label die and stamp that sentiment for the inside of the card. I just thought that would finish it off. Lately, I've really been trying to finish the insides of my cards when I can, or when I know specifically what I want it to say. And then when I'm ready to hand it to somebody, I don't have to go back and redo anything or try to remember what inks I use. So that says Christmas Cheer. And then for the card panel, I'm using some Strathmore Bristol Smooth 100-pound cardstock. That measures 4 1/4 by 11 inches. I've scored it at 5 1/2 inches. And this will be a top folding A2 size card. So let's go ahead and glue down this to that front panel of the card. And then let's go ahead and glue down that little label on the inside of the card. And I just centered that. Let me give you a closer look at the finished faux shaker card, and you can see those elements aren't moving around very much, but I really liked how this came out. I liked how my sentiment was easily able to be read, and it still gives you that look of a shaker card. So I really hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you don't miss a single video. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate it, and I hope you all have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.